All right, y'all. It's time for my favorite segment. It's time for Marvel in the 90s. And today we're talking about the Generation X Underground Special from Jim Mahfood. Came out in 1998. This is a very peculiar oddity for Marvel at this time. Initially conceived and started as an annual for Generation X between Scott Lobdell and Jim Mahfood. It eventually morphed into just Jim Mahfood doing basically an underground alternative comic version of Generation X. And I loved it then, and I love it now. So 100%. We were going to do this on a Marvel in the 90s. This, to me, is one of the best comics Marvel produced in the 90s. Let's dig in. So it's that very distinctive Jim Mahfood graffiti, funk, hip-hop type style that we see in books like the first couple of Girl Scout stories from Oni Press, or Oni and then Image. And then, of course, his work at Oni Press with Clerks. I fell into Jim Mahfood's work through Kevin Smith in those Clerks books. So let's get into it. The first story is about Skin and Monet. Monet shows up. Skin's playing an Atari 2600. They're playing Space Invaders. He's like, you want to play? I've been playing for a few hours. I'm trying to get the high score. She decides to play, and it becomes this whole thing that just keeps going and going and going. They literally spend hours, days. And I remember people like this. I remember friends of mine that spent 28 hours playing Tekken Tag, practicing, getting better so they could beat everybody, and it wasn't fun to play it anymore. By the way, that Jim Mahfood style, oh my goodness, I love it. His style is way different now. I would love to see this kind of clean black and white, but man, the work now is also still really good and actually levels above composition-wise and all that kind of stuff. So the basic gist of this first story, and I love, like I said, I just love the artwork. I don't think anybody draws youth culture and hot chicks quite like Jim Mahfood. He makes it work. His use of fashion is absolutely top-notch. So Skin is starting to get really bothered because Monet is incredibly good at Space Invaders. And he's freaking out. Like, he's got to go take a piss at one point or go get some sleep. He's asking Paige he's asking Husk to basically, like, make sure she doesn't cheat. He's taking it way seriously, and it keeps going, and it gets to the end of, like, 28, 30-something hours of playing this game, and Monet has gotten 585 million points, and he winds up beating her by 1 point, and he's all excited, and then she goes, but I probably just quit. I just quit to let you win. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but I have more productive things to do, and it just leaves him a wreck. And she leaves saying, you'll never know if I quit on purpose. That's dope as shit. Then we get to one of my favorite things about this book is that it's doing these short stories, not taking itself seriously. That whole first story is about Skin versus Monet and Atari 2600 Space Invaders. I love it. And a commentary on how important vintage retro games are. And then we got Jubilee Scrapbook. That's what this is. It's just Jubilee Scrapbooks, so little bits of things here. You get to see that she went and saw Chibo Mato, which is a great band. She's also part of the Fishbone crew, right? And she's got all this. That's just a cool little bit to throw in here. Then we get to the next story, which is Generation X by way of Charlie's Angels. And I love it. So somebody this dude kidnaps Artie and Leech. And Emma Frost comes to Banshee and says, like, I need you to find Artie and Leech, my students. So he sends Banshee's Angels, which are going to be Husk, Monet, and Jubilee. And there's a great bit here, too, where Jubilee says, man, great logo, great title. And that's Jim Mahfood back there. And he goes, yeah, I spent 6 hours on it. And then it just goes lying. But this is a funked out kind of 70s Charlie's Angels kind of vibe. So they're going off on this mission. They go to find their main man in the detective agency. I think he's a detective, but it's Bishop. So it's a 70s version of Bishop. They offer him money for information to go and find this dude's henchman. They go hunt this dude down. The artwork is great, y'all. It's so good. And this is a book that is easy to find. This is not something that is like Going to be difficult to find. It's out there at cover price, but it's so fun. They pull out their gun. There's this great moment where they're like, well, it's not like they get any guns or anything, but they got all these guns. There's even a great moment where they're like, but we're you mutants? And Jubilee's like, we're mutants? I love the personality that's in this book. I love the artwork. The personality comes through that. It comes through in the story, and it's just absolutely fun. Let's go back to that artwork. Thick, bold line work, a graffiti type style, excellent use of screen tone, and it's all real. Even today, Jim Mahfood uses real screen tone, but there's a lot of imagination in these compositions, in these layouts, and his ultimate plan is to leech off their mutant powers. That's where Jubilee's like, wait, we're mutants? That's great. That's a great little bit. So he's trying to leech and Artie's mutant abilities into his pimp robots. Is like, yeah, an army of badass robotic super pimps. This is Marvel Comics in 1998, y'all. Like, this is post-bankruptcy. Just throw it out. Who wants to do what? Let's let Jim Mahfood take a crack at Generation X. And you know what? He should have just done Generation X from this point on. Needless to say, long story short, the girls get them. And that's just great artwork. Really great action. Really comedic. Great comedic timing. And Jubilee is the star for me in this bit. I love her. I thought she was awesome. So this story, and that's some really cool, like, look at that top panel right there. Some really cool design work there. Some really cool, like, creativity from Jim Mahfood. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. And then we got the nice resolution there at the end. And then we got the bootleg Generation X cards. This is another one of my favorite bits. It's just a single page. But if you read this fine print at the bottom, it says, hey, check it out, Gen X fans. Unofficial Generation X bootleg trading cards. They're fun. They're collectible. They're extremely illegal. Simply follow these easy instructions to assemble your trading cards. Number 1, cut out this page or photocopy it at your local copy shop. You can also enlarge or reduce the size of your cards using the photocopy machines. Number 2, using an X-Acto knife, be careful, cut out each individual card and mount it on a poster board or a comic book backing board. I recommend using spray glue, Super 77, or a glue stick. Number 3, forge Jim Mahfood's signature on the cards. 4, sell the cards for $50 each, pure profit. It is hilarious, man. And then we get to the final story, which is Half a Face, which is actually a very nuanced, resonating story about Chamber. And it's him apparently once a week. Sometimes he has enough and he leaves Massachusetts and he goes to New York and he thinks about running away. So this is more of a somber, serious kind of take, but it's also cool to show the versatility of how this art style, which is very unique to Jim Mahfood, is able to handle comedy, action, and drama. So he's basically just talking about how much it sucks to not be like the rest of his team. He can't act like he's a normal person. He's missing the bottom half of his face. It's part of his powers. And he talks about how all the time he goes to New York and wants to leave it all behind. Just wants to go off and do his own thing. And then at the end of the day, what does he do? He gives his money that he would have for a bus ticket to go further out to another place. He gives it to somebody, that money in need, and takes the bus back to Massachusetts, where the Generation X underground was. And then you got a sketchbook here. This is where it explains that this was initially supposed to be an annual, Scott Lobdell and him, but it turned into something else, turned into his own little story. This is him trying to figure out stuff, including realizing that Jubilee is not a smoker. That came from editorial. But a great little sketchbook to show you some of his early thoughts on the design. And then it has this Banshee's Angels t-shirt design with instructions to take this page, photocopy it, take it to the mall. This is very dated, 1998. Take it to the mall and have a shop there screen printed onto a t-shirt. And then at the very end, there's a parody of a Twinkies ad, and there's even a bit at the top where it's like, this is a parody. The lawyer said we had to say this. Where it's Generation X versus the Beat Generation. So it's a bunch of beatniks come up to the future to start kicking the future's ass because they think that they go all corporate. And then they calm them down by eating Twinkies because Twinkies stay the same. And even beatniks and Gen X love Twinkies. That is the Generation X Underground special. and it is absolutely amazing. So here is my physical copy of it. This is printed so freaking beautifully. It has got this like cardstock kind of cover, but it's like, so it's a thick cover, but it's like, it's got like texture. It's like almost like canvas-like. And the colors, two-tone colors right there, really freaking pop. A great shot of the team in the front. There are no ads in this book at all. The original price was $250. It's hand lettered by Jim Mahfood, screen tone hand applied by Jim Mahfood. It is nice paper. It is perfect for this. The inks really saturate in there. It is absolutely striking how this looks in person physically. And it's got that smell. This is super easy to find. So I would highly encourage anybody, you've heard me talking about Jim Mahfood. If you've never checked out any of his work, this is a perfect book to try. Great art, experimental, having fun, not taking itself seriously, and even poking fun. It's an alternative comics approach to Generation X that could only happen in post-bankruptcy Marvel, 1998. I love the book. I think it's amazing. That's 5 ya digs. 5 ya digs, y'all. And that has been Marvel in the 90s.